The sun rose blood-red over Redemption, Arizona territory, painting the desert in shades of copper and rust. March winds carried the scent of creosote and mesquite through the unpaved streets, stirring dust devils that danced between weathered buildings like restless spirits. The town square filled early that morning, not with the usual commerce of merchants and ranchers, but with something darker. A crowd gathered, their faces etched with curiosity and dread, drawn by the terrible magnetism of public execution. The gallows stood at the center of the square, its fresh pine lumber still weeping sap in the morning heat. A military drum beat a slow, methodical rhythm that matched the collective heartbeat of 200 souls pressed shoulder to shoulder. Children perched on their fathers' shoulders, women clutched handkerchiefs, men removed their hats, though whether from respect or merely custom, none could say. Colonel Vernon Ashford stood on the platform, his cavalry uniform immaculate despite the dust that coated everything else in this forsaken territory. He was tall and lean, his face weathered by years of frontier service, a long scar running from his left temple to his jaw. In his hands he held a document, its official seal catching the morning light. Behind him, flanked by 6 soldiers with rifles at the ready, stood a woman unlike any the town had ever seen. She towered above her guards, easily 6 feet 4 inches tall, her Apache heritage evident in her high cheekbones and copper skin. Her wrists were bound with iron shackles that had rubbed her skin raw, but her posture remained unbowed. Her name was Naye, and her eyes dark as midnight held no fear, only a terrible burning resolve. The noose hung beside her, swaying gently in the desert breeze. Ashford unrolled the document, his voice carrying across the silent square with military precision. By order of the United States Army and the territory of Arizona, this woman stands convicted of murder. 3 weeks ago she escaped custody while being transferred to the San Carlos Reservation. During her escape she killed Private James Mitchell, a soldier serving his country with honor. For this crime she will hang by the neck until dead. May God have mercy on her soul. He rolled the document back up, tucked it into his coat, and turned to face the crowd. His voice dropped, became almost conversational. Before sentence is carried out, I ask, as is customary, does any man here speak for this savage? Does anyone claim knowledge of her character or circumstance that might move this court to mercy? The silence that followed was absolute. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Naye stood perfectly still, her gaze fixed on the horizon beyond the town where the Chiricahua Mountains rose like ancient guardians. She had known this moment would come. She had prepared herself for death. What she had not prepared for was the loneliness of it, the terrible isolation of standing before a crowd of strangers who saw her not as a person, but as a problem to be solved with rope and gravity. Ashford nodded, satisfied. He gestured to the executioner, a squat man in a black hood. Proceed. The executioner placed his hand on the lever that would drop the trap door. The drumbeat stopped. In that crystalline moment of silence, a single gunshot cracked across the square like thunder. The rope snapped, cut clean through by a rifle bullet. Naye dropped to the platform, landing hard on her knees but alive. The crowd erupted in shouts and screams. Soldiers wheeled around, rifles raised, searching for the shooter. From the edge of the crowd, a man stepped forward. He was not tall, not particularly imposing. His clothes marked him as a rancher-worn denim and a sun-faded shirt, boots, scuffed and practical. His face was lean and weathered, framed by dark hair that needed cutting and a short beard that needed trimming. In his hands he held a Winchester rifle, still smoking from the shot. His name was Josiah Brennan, and his blue eyes were calm as a winter sky. I speak for her, Josiah said, his voice steady, despite the 24 rifle barrels now pointing at him. I speak for her, and I claim her under my protection. Ashford's face went purple with rage. Seize that man. He has just committed an act of treason against the United States Army. Soldiers pushed through the crowd, but Josiah did not run. He lowered his rifle carefully to the ground and raised his hands, but he did not lower his gaze from Ashford's face. The soldiers grabbed him roughly, forcing him forward toward the platform. Sheriff Marcus Dalton, a broad-shouldered man in his 50s with a silver star on his vest, pushed through the crowd. Hold on now, Colonel. This is civilian territory and that man just exercised his right to speak. You said yourself you asked if anyone would speak for her. Ashford turned on him, fury radiating from every line of his body. He shot at a military execution. He shot the rope. Dalton corrected, his voice mild but firm. Didn't see him shoot at any person, and technically you did ask for someone to speak. He spoke. With a rifle granted, but he spoke. The crowd murmured, uncertain whether to be horrified or entertained by this sudden drama. Josiah climbed the steps to the platform, soldiers on either side of him, but making no move to restrain him further. He walked past Ashford and knelt beside Naye, who remained on her knees, shackled hands pressed against the rough planking. Her breath came in short gasps, the first sign of emotion she had shown. "You all right?" Josiah asked quietly. She looked at him, then really looked at him, searching his face for something. Mockery, perhaps, or hidden cruelty, or the kind of savior complex that was somehow worse than honest hatred. She found none of those things. She found only a strange, tired sadness, and beneath it a stubborn determination. "Why?" she whispered, her English heavily accented but clear. "Because what they're doing is wrong," Josiah said simply. Ashford loomed over them both. "This woman is a murderer, Brennan. She killed a United States soldier." Josiah stood slowly, turning to face the colonel. The platform brought them nearly eye to eye. "That's not why you're hanging her, though, is it, Colonel?" Something flickered across Ashford's scarred face. Fear, perhaps, or recognition. "What are you implying?" Josiah raised his voice, projecting it across the square as Ashford had done. "This woman didn't kill anyone. She's being executed because she's a witness to something you don't want anyone to know about." The murmuring in the crowd grew louder. Ashford's jaw clenched. "You're talking nonsense, the ravings of a fool." "Then let her speak," Josiah said. "Let her tell her side of it. If she's guilty, she'll hang anyway. But if she's innocent and you hang her without a fair hearing, that's murder, and every person here will know it." Ashford's hand moved toward his sidearm, but Dalton was suddenly there, his own hand resting casually on his holstered revolver. "I reckon Brennan's got a point, Colonel. Might be we should hear what the woman has to say before we string her up, just to be proper about it." The crowd's murmuring had become a rumble. Faces that had been eager for spectacle now looked uncertain, troubled. The collective conscience of redemption, such as it was, had begun to stir. Ashford looked around at the faces, calculating. He was a military man used to obedience and clear chains of command. But this was not a battlefield, and these were not soldiers. These were civilians, voters, people who would remember this day and talk about it for years to come. And standing among them were several men Ashford recognized, men from Tucson and other larger towns, including a newspaper reporter furiously scribbling notes. The colonel took a step back, visibly composing himself. When he spoke again, his voice was controlled, almost gentle. "Very well. Mr. Brennan, you have spoken for this woman, but understand she is Apache. She has no legal standing in this territory. She is by law property of the reservation system. Unless you can prove some legal relationship to her, some claim that supersedes military jurisdiction, she remains under my authority." Josiah felt the trap closing. He had acted on instinct, seeing an injustice and moving to stop it without thinking through the consequences. Now he stood on a gallows platform with 200 witnesses, having shot a military execution rope with no legal ground to stand on. His mind raced. Property, jurisdiction, legal relationship. The words tumbled through his thoughts, and then like a lightning strike, an idea came to him. A terrible idea, a desperate idea, an idea that would change everything. He looked at Naye, still kneeling, watching him with those ancient, knowing eyes. He thought of his wife Clara, dead 6 months now. He thought of her last words whispered from her fever bed. "Don't let this world make you cruel, Josiah. Promise me." He had promised. Josiah turned back to Ashford, squared his shoulders, and spoke words he knew he could never take back. "She's not property of the reservation, Colonel. She's my wife." The silence that followed was so profound that Josiah could hear his own heartbeat thundering in his ears. The crowd stood frozen, every face turned toward him in shock. Even the soldiers looked uncertain, rifles lowering slightly. Ashford's expression went blank with disbelief, the scar on his jaw twitching. Then he laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. "Your wife. You expect us to believe that you, a dirt-poor rancher, married an Apache woman?" "I don't expect you to believe anything," Josiah said. "But it's the truth. She saved my son's life 2 months ago. I married her in gratitude and in recognition of her courage. We were wed by private ceremony, as is our right." It was a lie. Every word of it except the part about Samuel, his 8-year-old son, whom Naye actually had saved from drowning in the river during one of her escapes. Josiah had seen it happen from a distance, had arrived just in time to see this giant of a woman hauling his choking, gasping boy from the water before disappearing into the brush. He had never even learned her name until today. But the lie felt necessary in a way that transcended mere survival. It felt like the only true thing he could say in this moment. Ashford's face darkened. "That's convenient. Very convenient. And yet I see no marriage certificate, no witnesses, nothing but your word." From the crowd, an elderly voice spoke up. Reverend Thomas Hollis, the town's Baptist minister, climbed the steps to the platform. He was old, well past 70, his white hair thinning but his eyes sharp and clear. "Colonel Ashford, I must interject. Under territorial law, a common law marriage is recognized if both parties consent and present themselves as married. If Mr. Brennan claims this woman as his wife, and if she does not dispute it, then by law she is entitled to the protections afforded to the spouse of an American citizen." Ashford turned on the old preacher. "She's Apache." "She's also half white," Reverend Hollis said quietly. "I can see it in her features. Her mother was likely a white woman. That makes her eligible for citizenship if she marries an American. It's the law, Colonel. Not a law you like, perhaps, but a law nonetheless." All eyes turned to Naye. She remained kneeling, her shackled hands trembling now, the first real sign of vulnerability she had shown. She looked up at Josiah, and in her eyes he saw a question that cut deeper than any blade. "Why are you doing this? What do you want from me?" Josiah knelt beside her again, speaking softly enough that only she could hear. "I know you don't know me. I know this makes no sense. But if you say no, you die today. If you say yes, you get time. Time to tell your story. Time to fight back. I'm not asking you to really be my wife. I'm just asking you to stay alive long enough to make them hear the truth." Naye's dark eyes searched his face for a long moment. Then slowly she nodded. Josiah stood and helped her to her feet. Even hunched with exhaustion and injury, she was taller than him. He turned to face Ashford and the crowd. "She accepts. Before God and all these witnesses, I claim Naye as my lawful wife." The crowd erupted. Some shouted in approval, moved by the romance of it. Others hollered in outrage, offended by the very idea of such a union. Sheriff Dalton held up his hands, calling for order. Ashford stood perfectly still, his scarred face unreadable. When he finally spoke, his voice was soft, almost sad. "Very well, Mr. Brennan. You have bought her time. 7 days. In 7 days you will present evidence of this marriage to a federal judge. If you can prove your claim, she will be released to your custody. If you cannot, she will hang, and you will hang beside her for obstruction of justice and perjury. Do you understand?" "I understand," Josiah said. "Then get her out of my sight." Sheriff Dalton produced a key and unlocked Naye's shackles. Her wrists were bloody, the skin rubbed raw. She rubbed them gingerly, wincing at the pain. Josiah took off his own worn jacket and draped it over her shoulders. It was far too small for her frame, but she accepted it without a word. They descended from the platform together, the crowd parting before them like the Red Sea. Josiah could feel the weight of 200 stares, could hear the whispers starting already. Some looked at him with admiration. Many looked at him with disgust. A few looked at him with pity, as if he had just signed his own death warrant. Perhaps he had. As they reached the edge of the square, a small figure broke free from the crowd and ran toward them. Samuel, Josiah's 8-year-old son with his mother's light hair and his father's blue eyes. The boy skidded to a stop, staring up at Naye with wonder and recognition. "Pa," Samuel said breathlessly, "is that the lady who saved me?" "Yes, son," Josiah said. "This is Naye, and she's going to be staying with us for a while." Samuel looked from his father to Naye and back again, confusion warring with excitement on his young face. "Is she really going to be my new ma?" Josiah opened his mouth, uncertain how to answer, but Naye knelt down, bringing herself to the boy's eye level. She reached out one large scarred hand and gently touched his cheek. "I am not your mama," she said, her accent making the words sound like a song. "But I will keep you safe, as I did before." Samuel smiled a gap-toothed grin of pure, innocent acceptance and took her hand. Together, the three of them walked through the parting crowd away from the gallows toward whatever future this desperate lie had created. Behind them, Colonel Ashford watched them go, his face a mask of barely controlled fury. When they were out of sight, he turned to his aide, a young lieutenant with nervous eyes. "Send word to Fort Huachuca," Ashford said quietly. "Tell them we have a problem." The ride back to Josiah's ranch took 3 hours through terrain that shifted from dust to scrub to scattered pine as they climbed into the foothills. Josiah drove the wagon while Samuel sat between him and Naye, chattering excitedly about everything and nothing the way only an 8-year-old could. Naye remained silent, her eyes constantly scanning the horizon, watching for threats only she could see. The ranch, when they finally reached it, was modest to the point of poverty. A small cabin of rough-hewn logs, a barn that leaned slightly to the left, a corral with split-rail fencing, and perhaps 30 head of cattle scattered across the brown grass. Chickens pecked in the dirt. A windmill creaked, drawing water from a deep well. It was not much, but it was honest work, and it was home. Josiah helped Naye down from the wagon, conscious of her wounds and exhaustion. She had not complained during the journey, but he could see the pain in the way she moved, the careful placement of each step. "Samuel, go gather eggs for supper," Josiah said. The boy ran off, happily swinging his basket. Josiah turned to Naye. "You should rest. There's a cot in the barn, clean straw blankets." She shook her head. "I do not hide in barns like livestock. If I am to be your wife in their eyes, I sleep in your house." It was the most she had said since they left town. Josiah nodded slowly. "Fair enough. But I'll take the barn. You and Samuel can have the cabin." "No." Her voice was firm. "If soldiers come, they will expect to find us together. Your lie must look real, or it protects neither of us." She was right, and Josiah knew it. The thought made him uncomfortable in ways he had not fully considered when he spoke those reckless words on the gallows. He had been married to Clara for 9 years before she died. The cabin still held her presence in every corner, her touch on every surface. The idea of sharing that space with a stranger felt like a betrayal, but he had made his choice. There was no going back now. "Then we'll make it work," he said. "Come inside. Let me see to those wounds." The cabin's interior was simple but well kept. A stone fireplace dominated one wall. A rough table with 4 chairs sat in the center. 2 narrow beds flanked the far wall, one slightly larger than the other. Shelves held tin plates, cups, a few books, and a small collection of Clara's things that Josiah had not been able to put away. A rocking chair sat by the window, empty now but still seeming to hold the ghost of the woman who had spent so many evenings there. Josiah pumped water from the indoor hand pump, a luxury Clara had insisted on when they built the place. He heated it over the fire and prepared clean cloths. When he turned back, Naye was examining the cabin with careful attention, her fingers trailing over the furniture as if reading its history. She stopped at the rocking chair, her hand resting on its worn back. "Your wife," she said. It was not a question. "She died 6 months ago. Fever." Naye nodded slowly. "I am sorry. It is hard to lose the person who makes home feel like home." Something in the way she said it made Josiah pause. "You've lost someone too." Her hand dropped from the chair. "I have lost many, But yes, there was someone who made even running feel like home. He died at Skeleton Canyon. Skeleton Canyon. The name meant nothing to Josiah, but the way she said it, the weight it carried, told him it meant everything. What happened there? Naye turned to face him, and for the first time he saw past the warrior mask she wore. He saw grief raw and bleeding. That is what your colonel does not want anyone to know. Before Josiah could ask more, Samuel burst through the door with his basket of eggs, effectively ending the conversation. They ate a simple dinner of beans, cornbread, and scrambled eggs. Samuel asked Naye dozens of questions, which she answered with patience that surprised Josiah. Where did she learn English from missionaries at the reservation? Could she really lift a full-grown cow? She had never tried, but probably not. Did she know how to shoot a bow and arrow? Yes, and she could teach him if his father allowed. Josiah watched them interact and felt something unexpected warm in his chest. Not love, nothing so complicated, but perhaps the first stirrings of something that might become family if given time to grow. After supper, Josiah tended to Naye's wounds properly. The shackles had torn her wrists badly, and she had older injuries beneath her clothes, bruises and cuts from her capture and imprisonment. She endured his ministrations without complaint, though he could see her jaw clench against the pain. Who was he? Josiah asked quietly as he wrapped clean bandages around her wrists. The person who died at Skeleton Canyon. Naye was silent for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was distant, as if she were speaking from a great depth. His name was Kuruk. He was a healer, not a warrior. He believed that peace was possible between our people and yours. He came to Skeleton Canyon to help negotiate that peace. She paused, her hands clenching into fists. They killed him with the others. 40 people. Elders mostly. A few women. No warriors. They came under a white flag to talk about terms for staying on our land peacefully. Colonel Ashford and his men slaughtered them all. Josiah's hands stilled on the bandage. The words fell between them like stones into a well, the splash of their impact sending ripples outward. That's why he wants you dead, Josiah said slowly. You were there. You saw it. I was the translator, Naye said. I speak English and 3 Apache dialects. They brought me to help the elders communicate. When the shooting started, I hid under the bodies. I played dead while they walked among the corpses, making sure. When they left, I ran. I have been running ever since. Dear God, Josiah whispered. 40 people. 40 witnesses to land that white men wanted, 40 obstacles to a treaty that would have given us rights to stay, 40 problems solved with bullets. Her voice was hollow, scraped clean of everything except a terrible grinding anger. And now, I am the only one left who knows the truth. The only one who can say that it was not a battle, not self-defense, but murder, cold and calculated. Josiah finished tying off the bandage and sat back. His mind reeled with the implications. If what she said was true, and he believed it was, then Colonel Ashford had committed an atrocity, a war crime, the kind of act that if exposed would destroy careers and possibly lead to hangings of a different sort. Why didn't you tell them? Josiah asked. In town on the gallows. Why didn't you say all this? Naye looked at him with something like pity. Who would believe the word of an Apache woman against a decorated colonel who would care? My people have no voice in your courts. We are ghosts in our own land, invisible, except when you need someone to blame or someone to kill. She was right, and the truth of it made Josiah ashamed of his own naivety. He had lived his whole life in this territory, had seen the injustices and the casual cruelties, but he had never really looked at them. He had been too busy surviving, too focused on his own struggles to see the larger pattern. Then we make them care, Josiah said. We find a way to make your voice heard. You're not just an Apache woman anymore. You're my wife. That gives you legal standing. We can demand a hearing, get a judge involved, maybe even contact newspapers. Naye studied him with those dark, measuring eyes. You risk much for a woman you do not know, for a people who are not your own. Why? It was the question Josiah had been asking himself since he pulled that trigger in the town square. Why had he done it? What impulse had driven him to throw away his safety, his son's future, everything for a stranger? "Before she died," Josiah said slowly, "my wife made me promise something. She was delirious with fever, barely knew where she was, but she grabbed my hand and made me swear. She said, 'This world is cruel, Josiah, but don't let it make you cruel too. If you ever have a chance to stand between an innocent person and harm, you stand, even if it costs you everything.' I didn't really understand what she meant until I saw you on that gallows." He met Naye's gaze directly. "I've spent 6 months trying to figure out how to keep living without her, trying to figure out what kind of man I want to be for Samuel. And then I saw you standing there about to die for the crime of surviving, and I realized that if I let it happen, if I stood there and did nothing, then I would be exactly the kind of man Clara feared I might become, the kind who looks away." Naye's expression softened almost imperceptibly. "Your wife was wise. I wish I could have known her." "She would have liked you," Josiah said, and found that he meant it. A comfortable silence settled between them, broken only by the crackling of the fire and Samuel's soft snoring from his bed. The boy had fallen asleep during their conversation, exhausted by the day's excitement. 7 days, Naye said quietly. "In 7 days we must prove to a judge that we are truly married. How do we do that?" Josiah had been thinking about the same problem. "We need witnesses, people who will swear they've seen us together, seen us act as husband and wife. Sheriff Dalton might help, Reverend Hollis too, but mostly we need to live the lie so convincingly that no one can doubt it." "And what does that mean?" Naye asked. "How do a white rancher and an Apache woman convince others they are in love?" The word love hung in the air between them, strange and uncomfortable. Josiah cleared his throat. "We don't have to convince them of love, just of commitment, just of partnership. We work together. We present a united front. We make it look real." Naye nodded slowly. "In my culture, marriage is not always about love at first. It is about survival, about alliance, about building something stronger together than either could build alone. Perhaps this white man's marriage can be the same." "Perhaps," Josiah agreed. They sat in silence for a while longer, both lost in their own thoughts. Outside, the desert night deepened, stars blazing in the vast darkness. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote howled, the sound lonely and wild. Finally, Josiah stood and moved toward the door. "I'll sleep in the barn tonight. Tomorrow we'll start figuring out how to make this work." "No," Naye's voice stopped him. "If soldiers come in the night, they must find us together. You sleep here. I will not harm you, and you have shown you will not harm me. We can share this space without shame." Josiah hesitated, then nodded. He took blankets from a chest and made a bedroll on the floor between the 2 beds, close enough to the fire to stay warm. Naye lay down on Clara's old bed, still wearing the clothes she had nearly been hanged in, too exhausted to care. "Josiah," she said into the darkness, just as he was drifting toward sleep. "Yes, thank you, for the lie that might save us both." "You're welcome. For what it's worth, I don't think it feels like a lie anymore." He heard her soft exhalation, something that might have been the ghost of a laugh. Then silence settled over the cabin, and they slept. The days that followed fell into an unexpected rhythm. Josiah taught Naye the routines of ranch work, and she proved a quick study. She could mend fence as well as any man could gentle horses with a touch that seemed almost magical, and could outwork Josiah in the fields despite her injuries. Samuel followed her everywhere, soaking up her knowledge of tracking plants and survival skills. In the evenings they ate together, and gradually conversation came easier. Naye told stories of her childhood, of a time before the reservations when her people moved freely. Josiah shared memories of Clara, of building this ranch from nothing, of dreams that had died with his wife. On the 3rd day, Sheriff Dalton rode out to check on them. He tipped his hat to Naye with genuine respect. "Ma'am, Brennan, just wanted to make sure you folks were settling in all right." "We're managing," Josiah said. Thank you for standing up for us in town." Dalton shrugged. "Did what was right. Though I gotta warn you, Brennan, Ashford's not letting this go. He's been asking questions, poking around trying to find holes in your story. And there's talk he's sent word to Fort Huachuca called in some favors." "What kind of favors?" Josiah asked, though he suspected he knew the answer. "The kind that come with guns and no questions asked. You watch yourselves, both of you." That night Josiah checked his rifle 3 times before bed. Naye noticed but said nothing. She had started sleeping with a knife under her pillow, a precaution neither of them discussed, but both understood. On the 5th day Reverend Hollis arrived with unexpected news. "I've spoken to Judge Morrison in Tucson. He's agreed to hear your case. He'll be in Redemption in 2 days for the hearing." "That's good news," Josiah said. "Isn't it?" Hollis's expression was grave. "Judge Morrison is a fair man, but he's also a practical one. He'll want proof of your marriage, real proof. Witnesses who can swear to your cohabitation, to genuine affection, to the markers of a real union. Can you provide that?" Josiah looked at Naye, who met his gaze steadily. "We'll provide it," he said. After the Reverend left, Naye turned to Josiah. "He is right. We have lived together, yes, but we have not lived as married people live. There is no affection between us, no tenderness. Any judge will see through it in moments." "Then we change that," Josiah said. "Starting now." The next day and night became a strange performance, a rehearsal for an audience that had not yet arrived. They held hands while working. They stood close when talking. Josiah found himself unconsciously brushing hay from Naye's hair, and she did not pull away. Samuel watched these interactions with innocent delight, clearly pleased by what he perceived as his father finding happiness again. But it was not performance, not entirely. Something real was growing between them, fragile and undefined. Respect certainly, trust gradually, and beneath that the first stirrings of something deeper that neither was ready to name. On the evening of the 6th day they sat together on the porch, watching the sun set over the desert. Samuel was already asleep inside, exhausted from a day of hard play. "Tomorrow," Naye said softly, "tomorrow we face the judge." "We'll be ready," Josiah said, though uncertainty gnawed at him. Naye turned to look at him, her face painted gold by the dying light. "If this does not work, if the judge rules against us, promise me you will not let them take me alive." Josiah's stomach clenched. "Don't talk like that. Promise me, Josiah. I will not hang. I will not give them that satisfaction. If it comes to it, you must help me choose my own end." He wanted to refuse to tell her it would not come to that, but looking into her eyes, seeing the terrible resolve there, he understood. She had already died once in her mind when she survived Skeleton Canyon. She had been living on borrowed time ever since. If that time ran out, she wanted control over how the story ended. "I promise," he said, the words tasting like ashes. "But it won't come to that. We'll find a way." Naye reached out and took his hand, her grip strong and warm. They sat like that as darkness fell, two people bound together by desperation and lies, hoping that hope alone might be enough to see them through. Inside the cabin, Samuel stirred in his sleep and smiled, dreaming of the family that was slowly, impossibly becoming real. Neither Josiah nor Naye saw the rider watching from the ridge above the ranch, his silhouette dark against the stars. Neither saw him turn his horse and ride hard toward Redemption, carrying news that would change everything. Colonel Ashford was done waiting. Tomorrow, when they came to town for the hearing, they would not face a judge alone. They would face an army. The 7th day was coming, and with it a reckoning that would test whether a lie told in desperation could become a truth worth dying for. The 7th day dawned cold and clear, the kind of morning that made the desert look almost beautiful in its harshness. Josiah woke before sunrise, as was his habit, and found Naye already awake, standing by the window and staring out at the darkness that was just beginning to pale into gray. "Couldn't sleep?" he asked quietly, careful not to wake Samuel. "Sleep is a luxury for people who believe they have a future," Naye said. "I am not sure I am one of those people." Josiah crossed the room to stand beside her. In the growing light he could see the tension in her shoulders, the way her hands gripped the windowsill as if it were the only thing keeping her anchored to the earth. Without thinking, he placed his hand over hers. "We have a future," he said. "Whatever happens today, we face it together." She turned to look at him, and something in her expression shifted. Not quite softening, but opening as if a door she had kept locked was finally beginning to crack. "You have already given up so much for me. Your reputation, your safety, your peace. If the judge rules against us, you could still walk away. You could say I deceived you, that you were tricked. They might believe you." "I won't do that," Josiah said firmly. "Why not?" "You owe me nothing. This marriage is a lie." Josiah was quiet for a moment, considering his words carefully. "It started as a lie," he said finally. "But somewhere in these past 6 days it stopped feeling like one. I don't know what that means exactly. I don't know what we are to each other. But I know I'm not walking away." Naye studied his face in the dim light, searching for deception or doubt. She found neither. Slowly, deliberately, she turned her hand beneath his, so their palms touched fingers intertwining. It was the first time she had initiated contact, and the gesture felt monumental. "Then we stand together," she said. "And if we fall together." "We're not going to fall," Josiah said, trying to inject confidence he did not entirely feel into his voice. Samuel woke, then stretching and yawning, his child's instinct for tension, making him unusually quiet as they prepared for the journey to town. Josiah made breakfast while Naye helped Samuel dress in his Sunday clothes. They ate in silence, each lost in their own thoughts about what the day might bring. As they prepared to leave, Josiah loaded his rifle and tucked his revolver into his belt. Naye watched him with approval. "You expect trouble?" "I'd be a fool not to. Ashford's had 6 days to prepare. He's not going to let this go quietly." They hitched the wagon and began the 3-hour journey to redemption. The desert stretched around them, vast and indifferent to human drama. Hawks circled overhead, hunting for breakfast. A jackrabbit bolted across their path, startling the horses. Samuel pointed out cloud shapes, trying to lighten the mood with his innocent chatter. About an hour into the journey, Naye suddenly stiffened. "Stop the wagon." Josiah pulled the horses to a halt. "What is it?" "We are being followed. 3 riders staying just out of sight behind that ridge." She pointed to a line of rocky outcroppings about a quarter-mile back. Josiah's hand moved to his rifle. "Ashford's men." "Perhaps. Or perhaps something else." Naye's eyes narrowed. "There is a way to know. Let me walk ahead. If they are hunting me, they will reveal themselves." "Absolutely not," Josiah said. "I'm not using you as bait." "Then what do you suggest? We cannot reach town with hostile riders at our back." Before Josiah could answer, a voice called out from the rocks ahead of them, not behind. "You can stop arguing now. We are not hostile." 3 figures emerged from behind a cluster of boulders. They were Apache, all 3 dressed in a mixture of traditional clothing and items taken from white settlements. The one in front was young, perhaps 28, with a lean, muscular build and eyes that burned with barely contained anger. He carried a rifle with the casual competence of someone who had been born holding weapons. Naye gasped a sound of pure shock. "Dakota!" The young man stopped about 20 feet from the wagon, his expression unreadable. "Hello, sister." The word hung in the air like smoke. Josiah looked from Naye to the young man and back again. "Your brother, my brother." Naye confirmed, her voice shaking slightly. "I thought you were dead. At Skeleton Canyon I thought everyone died." Dakota's face twisted with emotion. "I was not there. I was hunting in the mountains when it happened. By the time I returned, it was over. 40 bodies, 40 people I knew, loved, grew up with, and you were gone. Everyone said you were dead too." "I survived," Naye said simply, "and I have been running ever since." Dakota's gaze shifted to Josiah, and the anger in his eyes intensified. "Running into the arms of a white man, I see. I heard rumors in the reservation, heard that my sister married one of the people who killed our family. I did not believe it. I thought it must be a different Naye, someone else with the same name. But here you are. The contempt in his voice was like a physical blow. Naye climbed down from the wagon despite Josiah's whispered protest. She walked toward her brother, her head high, her bearing proud, despite the threadbare clothes and fading bruises. "You know nothing of what I have endured," she said, her voice low and dangerous. "Nothing of the choices I have had to make to survive." "I know you betrayed everything we are," Dakota spat. "I know you chose comfort over honor, a white man's bed over your people's memory." The slap came so fast that Josiah almost missed it. Naye's hand connected with her brother's face with a crack that echoed across the desert. Dakota staggered back more from shock than force, his hand moving to his reddening cheek. "You dare speak to me of honor?" Naye's voice shook with fury. "Where were you when they came for us? Where were you when I watched Karuk die? When I hid under the bodies of our elders while soldiers walked among them shooting anything that moved? Where was your honor then?" Dakota's face crumpled. The anger drained out of him, replaced by something rawer and more painful. "I should have been there. I know. Every day I wake up knowing I should have died with them. And every day I wake up wishing I had—" Naye said, her voice breaking. "But I did not die, Dakota. I survived. And this man, this white rancher you despise, he is the only reason I am still alive to mourn them. He risked everything to save me from the gallows. He gave me his name, his protection, his home. So before you judge me, brother, ask yourself what you have done for our people lately besides survive." Dakota looked at her for a long moment, then his gaze dropped to the ground. The two other Apache warriors who had accompanied him shifted uncomfortably clearly, not expecting this level of family drama. Josiah climbed down from the wagon slowly, his hand near his gun, but not on it. "I don't know what you've heard," he said to Dakota, "but your sister is not my property. She's not my comfort. She's my partner in trying to do something that might actually matter. She's the only witness to what happened at Skeleton Canyon. If she can testify, if a judge will listen, maybe we can bring the men responsible to justice." Dakota laughed bitterly. "Justice? There is no justice for Apache in white man's courts. There is only more death, more broken promises." "Maybe," Josiah said, "but maybe not. Maybe this time is different." "And what makes you think this time will be different?" Dakota demanded. "Because this time they'll have to kill a white man's wife to silence her," Josiah said. "That's harder to ignore than killing another Apache. It's not right, it's not fair, but it's the world we live in, and we're going to use it against them." Dakota studied Josiah with hostile intensity, looking for cracks, for weakness, for any sign of the casual cruelty he had come to expect from white men. He found something else instead. Determination, yes, but also bone-deep weariness and a kind of quiet desperation that he recognized because he had seen it in his own reflection. "You love her," Dakota said. It was not a question but an accusation. Josiah hesitated. The honest answer was complicated, a tangle of emotions he had not fully sorted through himself. Respect, certainly. Admiration. A growing sense of partnership that felt like it could become something deeper given time. But love. That was a word that carried the weight of his marriage to Clara, a weight he was not sure he could transfer to another person yet. But looking at Dakota's face, at the challenge and pain written there, Josiah understood that the truth of his feelings mattered less than the truth of his commitment. "Yes," he said simply. "I love her." Naye's sharp intake of breath told him she had not expected that answer. He did not look at her, keeping his gaze locked on Dakota's. Dakota's jaw worked as if he were chewing something bitter. Finally he nodded once, a sharp, reluctant movement. "Then perhaps you are not like the others." "Perhaps." One of the other warriors spoke up, an older man with gray threading through his black hair. "Dakota, we should go. If we are seen with them, it will bring trouble." "No," Dakota said, his voice gaining strength. "If my sister is going to fight, then I will fight beside her. That is what family does." He looked at Naye. "Tell me what you need." Naye's eyes filled with tears, the first Josiah had seen from her. "There was another survivor, an old woman named Ade. She hid in a cave after the massacre. If we can find her, if she will testify with me, perhaps the judge will believe us." "Adeye lives," Dakota said. "She is in the mountains 3 days' ride from here. But she is old and frightened. She will not come easily." "Then we convince her," Josiah said. "How fast can you reach her?" Dakota glanced at the sun, calculating. "We can be there by tonight if we ride hard, but the hearing is today." "Ask for a postponement," Naye said. "Tell the judge we have another witness, that we need time to bring her forward." "Ashford will never agree to that," Josiah said. "He wants this over quickly before we can build a real case." "Then we do not ask him," Dakota said, a grim smile crossing his face. "We go over his head. Who commands Fort Huachuca?" "General Hammond," Josiah said. "But he's Ashford's superior. He'll back his colonel." "Perhaps," Dakota said. "Or perhaps a general does not like his officers committing massacres that could embarrass the entire army. Perhaps he would like to know what really happened at Skeleton Canyon before it becomes a scandal." It was a long shot, but it was the only shot they had. Josiah made a decision. "Samuel, you're going to stay with Sheriff Dalton today. Naye and I will go to the hearing and request a postponement. Dakota, you and your men ride for Adeye. Bring her back alive and willing to testify. We'll hold Ashford off as long as we can." Dakota nodded. He looked at his sister, and something unspoken passed between them. Then he stepped forward and embraced her, the first genuine affection Josiah had seen between them. "Be careful, sister. The white man's law is a spider web. It catches the weak and lets the powerful walk free." "Then we will be strong," Naye said. The warriors mounted their horses and rode off toward the mountains, moving fast and low. Josiah, Naye, and Samuel continued toward redemption, each lost in their own thoughts about what awaited them. As the town came into view, Josiah could see that something was wrong. There were too many horses tied outside the courthouse, too many uniformed men moving through the streets. And standing on the courthouse steps, waiting with the patience of a predator, was Colonel Vernon Ashford. He was not alone. Beside him stood a man Josiah had never seen before, tall and expensively dressed with silver hair and the kind of smile that never reached the eyes. The man radiated wealth and power, and something about the way Ashford deferred to him made Josiah's stomach clench with dread. "Who is that?" Naye asked quietly. "I don't know," Josiah said, "but I have a feeling we're about to find out." They pulled the wagon to a stop in front of the courthouse. Sheriff Dalton appeared from the crowd, his expression grim. "Brennan, ma'am, I'll take Samuel inside, keep him safe." "What's happening?" Josiah asked. "That man with Ashford is Cyrus Hale," Dalton said. "Railroad baron from Tucson, rich as sin and twice as mean. Word is he owns half the territorial government and most of the judges. He showed up an hour ago with a dozen hired guns and a team of lawyers." Josiah's blood ran cold. "What does a railroad baron want with us?" Dalton looked at Naye, then back at Josiah. "That's what worries me. Whatever this is about, it's bigger than a disputed marriage. Be careful in there." They climbed the courthouse steps, and Cyrus Hale's smile widened as they approached. Up close, Josiah could see that the man was older than he had first appeared, perhaps 60, with the kind of weathered handsomeness that came from good living and expensive tailoring. "Mr. Brennan," Hale said, his voice smooth as aged whiskey. "And the infamous Naye. I've heard so much about you both. Quite the romantic tale, really. Love conquering all barriers of race and circumstance. It's almost poetic." "Who are you?" Josiah asked bluntly. "Cyrus Hale. I have business interests throughout the territory. Railroads mostly, but also mining and real estate. I'm here today as a concerned citizen hoping to see justice served." "Justice for whom?" Naye asked, her voice sharp. Hale's smile never wavered. "For everyone, my dear, for everyone." Colonel Ashford spoke up, his scarred face expressionless. "The judge is ready for you. Shall we proceed?" They entered the courthouse, and Josiah felt the weight of dozens of eyes on them. The courtroom was packed, standing room only, with townspeople, soldiers, reporters, and curious onlookers crammed into every available space. Judge Morrison sat at the bench, a stern man in his 60s with steel gray hair and wire-rimmed spectacles. The hearing began with all the formality of territorial law. The judge called the court to order and outlined the matter at hand. Josiah Brennan claimed to be married to the Apache woman known as Nye. The Army disputed this claim, arguing that the marriage was a fraud designed to obstruct justice. Both sides would present evidence and the judge would rule. Reverend Hollis testified first, explaining that while he had not performed the ceremony, common law marriages were valid in the territory if both parties consented and presented themselves as married. He had witnessed Josiah and Nye behaving as a married couple in the days since the incident in the town square. Sheriff Dalton corroborated this, adding that he had visited their ranch and found them living together, working together, and caring for Josiah's son together in a manner consistent with a legitimate family unit. Then it was the Army's turn. Colonel Ashford took the stand, and his testimony was damning. He presented evidence that Nye had been a prisoner, that she had escaped custody, that she had killed a soldier during that escape. He produced documents showing she was registered to the San Carlos Reservation and therefore subject to military jurisdiction. He argued that Josiah's claim of marriage was a transparent lie made in the heat of the moment to obstruct a lawful execution. "Mr. Brennan is not a bad man," Ashford said, his voice full of false sympathy. "He's a grieving widower who acted foolishly, swept up in misguided compassion. But compassion cannot override law. This woman is a murderer. She must face justice." Judge Morrison listened impassively, making notes. When Ashford finished, the judge turned to Josiah. "Mr. Brennan, you may present your defense." Josiah stood, his heart hammering. "Your Honor, everything the colonel said is based on a lie. Nye did not kill that soldier. She defended herself against men who were trying to silence her. She's a witness to a crime committed by Colonel Ashford himself." The courtroom erupted in shocked murmurs. Ashford's face went purple. Judge Morrison banged his gavel. "Order, Mr. Brennan, that is a serious accusation. Do you have proof?" "I have her testimony," Josiah said, "and I have another witness, an old woman named Ade who survived the same massacre. Give us 3 days to bring her here and we'll prove everything." Judge Morrison frowned. 3 days is a significant delay. Cyrus Hale rose smoothly to his feet. "Your Honor, if I may, I think I can expedite matters." The judge nodded. "Proceed, Mr. Hale." Hale's smile was beatific as he turned to address the courtroom. "I appreciate Mr. Brennan's passion. I truly do. But we must be realistic about what we're dealing with here. This woman is making wild accusations against a decorated Army officer, a man who has served this territory with honor for 20 years. She offers no proof, only her word. And forgive me for saying so, but the word of an Apache woman, a convicted murderer, carries little weight in a court of law." "She's not a convicted murderer," Josiah said hotly. "She hasn't been tried." "A technicality," Hale said. "The point remains. You're asking this court to delay justice based on nothing but allegations, and I'm afraid that simply won't do." Judge Morrison looked troubled. "Mr. Brennan, do you have any evidence beyond your wife's testimony? Any documentation, any physical proof of these allegations?" Josiah's mind raced. They had nothing. No documents, no other witnesses immediately available, nothing but Nye's word and the hope that Dakota could bring Ade in time. Then Nye stood. "Your Honor, I would like to speak." The courtroom went silent. Every eye turned to her. She stood tall, her height making her tower over even the men around her, and when she spoke her voice carried clearly through the room. "I am Nye, daughter of the Chiricahua Apache. I have been called savage, murderer, liar. But I am none of these things. I am a survivor. 3 months ago I watched 40 people die at a place called Skeleton Canyon. They were elders come to negotiate peace. They carried no weapons. They trusted that a white flag would protect them." Her voice did not waver, did not break, but the pain in it was unmistakable. "Colonel Ashford ordered his men to kill them all, every man, every woman. He walked among the bodies afterward to make sure none lived. But I lived. I hid under the dead, I breathed their last breath, I wore their blood like a second skin. And when the soldiers left, I ran." She turned to look directly at Ashford. "I ran because I knew that if I spoke, I would be killed. Not because I am guilty, but because the truth I carry is dangerous. It exposes men who hide behind uniforms and flags while committing murder, and now those same men want me dead, want to silence the last voice that can tell the world what really happened. The courtroom was utterly still. Even Hale's smile had faded slightly. This man, Naye said, gesturing to Josiah, risked his life, his son's future, his entire world to give me a chance to speak that truth. We are married, yes. Perhaps it began as a legal fiction, but it has become something real, a partnership built on mutual respect, on shared purpose, on the belief that truth matters more than convenience. She looked at Judge Morrison. You ask for proof. I give you my word. I give you my scars. I give you the fact that powerful men have sent soldiers and lawyers to silence one unarmed woman. Why would they try so hard if I were merely a liar? It was a powerful moment, and Josiah could see it land. Several people in the courtroom were nodding. Even the judge looked moved. Then Cyrus Hale laughed. It was not a cruel laugh exactly, but it was dismissive, the kind of laugh that reduced everything Naye had said to naive foolishness. A beautiful speech, Hale said, truly moving. But speeches are not evidence, and I'm afraid that without evidence this court has no choice but to rule in favor of the army. Actually, a new voice said from the back of the courtroom, there is evidence. Every head turned. Standing in the doorway, dusty and exhausted from hard riding, was Dakota, and beside him, leaning heavily on his arm, was an ancient Apache woman with one milky white eye and a face carved by a century of desert sun. Adaye had arrived. The courtroom exploded into chaos. People shouted questions, jumped to their feet, craned their necks to see the new arrivals. Judge Morrison banged his gavel repeatedly, calling for order. Soldiers moved toward Dakota and Adaye, but Sheriff Dalton stepped between them, his hand on his gun. These people are witnesses, Dalton said firmly. They have a right to be heard. Ashford had gone pale, the weathered lines of his face deepening. For the first time since Josiah had met him, the colonel looked genuinely afraid. Cyrus Hale's expression remained pleasant, but his eyes had gone cold and calculating. Dakota helped Adaye forward through the crowded courtroom. The old woman moved slowly, each step deliberate, but her spine was straight and her one good eye blazed with fierce intelligence. When she reached the front of the courtroom, she looked directly at Naye, and a smile creased her ancient face. "Child," she said in Apache, her voice surprisingly strong, "you live. I prayed you lived." Naye replied in the same language, tears streaming down her face. "Grandmother, you should not have come. It is dangerous." "I am old," Adaye said. "Death holds no fear for me. But lies I cannot abide." Judge Morrison cleared his throat. "Does anyone here speak Apache? I need a translator." "I speak it," Naye said, "but I am not impartial." "I also speak it," Dakota said. "I will translate." The judge nodded. "Very well. State your name for the record." Through Dakota, Adaye gave her name and her age, which she estimated at 73, though she admitted she did not keep careful count of years the way white men did. She explained that she had lived at the San Carlos Reservation until 3 months ago, when she and many others had been invited to travel to Skeleton Canyon for a peace negotiation. "Who invited you?" Judge Morrison asked. Adaye pointed directly at Colonel Ashford. "That man. He sent word that the Army wanted to discuss new terms to give our people more land, better conditions. The elders were hopeful. They chose 40 people to go, the wisest and most respected among us. They chose me because I remember the old treaties, the promises made long ago." "And what happened when you arrived at Skeleton Canyon?" Through Dakota's steady translation, Adaye described the scene. The Apache delegation had arrived as requested, carrying a white flag, armed only with ceremonial knives. Ashford and his men had been waiting. There had been some initial discussion, but before any real negotiation could begin, another man had arrived. "Describe this man," the judge said. Adaye's good eye fixed on Cyrus Hale. "That one, the silver-haired man who smiles like a snake." A collective gasp went through the courtroom. Hale's smile finally disappeared entirely. Your Honor, this is absurd. I was nowhere near Skeleton Canyon 3 months ago. I was in Tucson attending to business. I have a dozen witnesses who can attest to that. Let her finish, Judge Morrison said sharply. Ade continued. According to her testimony, Hale had arrived and spoken with Ashford privately. She could not hear what was said, but the conversation was brief and seemed to upset the colonel. Then Hale had ridden away, and minutes later Ashford had given an order. The soldiers had opened fire on the unarmed Apache delegation. I fell immediately, Ade said through Dakota. An old woman, I am quick to the ground. The bodies of younger, stronger people fell on top of me. I could not move, could barely breathe. But I lived. I heard the soldiers walking among us, heard gunshots as they made certain no one survived. I heard Colonel Ashford say, "Burn them, make it look like they attacked us first." But they did not burn the bodies, Judge Morrison said. No, Ade confirmed. Before they could, shots were fired from the canyon walls. Some of our warriors had followed the delegation, not trusting the white man's promises. They attacked the soldiers. In the confusion, the soldiers retreated. The warriors found me alive among the dead. They took me to the mountains to hide. Judge Morrison turned to Colonel Ashford. Colonel, how do you respond to these accusations? Ashford stood stiffly, his military bearing intact despite the fear in his eyes. Your Honor, this is the word of 2 Apache women against a decorated officer of the United States Army. No physical evidence supports their claims. No documentation exists of any meeting at Skeleton Canyon. They are lying to save one of their own from legitimate justice. I am not lying, Naye said, rising to her feet, and I can prove it. She reached into her dress and pulled out a small leather pouch that had been hidden against her skin. From it she withdrew a piece of paper creased and worn from being folded and refolded many times. This is a letter, she said, written by Colonel Ashford to the Apache elders inviting them to Skeleton Canyon for peace negotiations. It bears his signature and the Army seal. I took it from the body of one of the elders after the massacre. I kept it because I knew no one would believe my words alone. Gasps and shouts filled the courtroom. Josiah stared at Naye in shock. In all their conversations, in all their planning, she had never mentioned having documentary evidence. She had let him believe they had nothing but testimony. Judge Morrison took the letter, examined it carefully. His expression darkened as he read. This appears genuine. Colonel Ashford, is this your signature? Ashford's face had gone from ashen to gray. He opened his mouth closed. It opened it again. That is, the letter may be genuine, but that doesn't prove anything. We did plan a meeting, but the Apache attacked us. We defended ourselves. Then why did you report that you engaged a band of hostile warriors? The judge asked. Why did you claim they were armed and aggressive? This letter invites them to a peace negotiation. I can explain, Ashford said desperately. I'm sure you can, said a new voice. This time the interruption came from outside the courthouse. Through the windows, Josiah could see riders approaching. A lot of riders. And at their head, wearing the uniform of a general, was a man whose presence commanded instant attention. General Thomas Hammond, commander of Fort Huachuca, dismounted and strode into the courthouse. His weathered face was set in an expression of cold fury. Behind him came a full company of cavalry soldiers, their rifles at the ready. Colonel Ashford, Hammond said, his voice cutting through the confused babble like a knife. You are under arrest for conduct unbecoming an officer, for filing false reports, and for suspicion of murder. Surrender your sidearm immediately. Ashford's hand dropped to his gun, but he was surrounded. Slowly, mechanically, he unbuckled his gun belt and let it fall to the floor. General Hammond turned to Judge Morrison. Your Honor, I apologize for the dramatic entrance. I received word this morning from sources I trust that one of my officers may have been involved in serious crimes. I rode here immediately to investigate. It seems I arrived at an opportune moment. Indeed, Judge Morrison said dryly. General, how did you come by this information? An anonymous letter, Hammond said. delivered to my office 3 days ago. It contained detailed accusations against Colonel Ashford and suggested that the truth would come to light at this hearing. I chose to attend and see for myself." Josiah looked at Naye, a question in his eyes. She gave the tiniest shake of her head. The letter had not come from her, which meant someone else had been working behind the scenes, someone who wanted Ashford exposed. Cyrus Hale, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, suddenly stood. "Well, this has been fascinating, but I'm afraid I have pressing business in Tucson. Judge Morris and General Hammond, if you'll excuse me." "Sit down, Mr. Hale," General Hammond said. It was not a request. Hale's pleasant mask finally cracked completely. "I don't take orders from you, General. I'm a civilian businessman." "You're a witness to a potential war crime," Hammond said. "And according to this old woman's testimony, you were present at Skeleton Canyon. So sit down or I'll have my men make you sit down." For a moment, Josiah thought Hale might resist. The man's hand moved toward his jacket where a gun might be concealed. But then he saw the soldiers raising their rifles, saw the crowd pressing close, saw that there was no escape. His hand dropped and he sat. Judge Morrison took control of the hearing again. "Mr. Hale, were you present at Skeleton Canyon on the date in question?" Hale's smile returned, though it was strained now. "I may have been in the general area on business. I travel extensively for my railroad concerns." "That's not an answer," the judge said. "Were you there, yes or no?" "I invoke my right not to incriminate myself," Hale said. The courtroom buzzed with shocked whispers. That response was as good as a confession in most people's minds. Adeye spoke again, her voice rising with strength. Through Dakota, she said, "That man wanted our land, the canyon and the territory around it. He told Colonel Ashford to clear us out to make it look like we were dangerous so the army would move us further away. He paid the colonel money. I saw the leather bag change hands before the shooting started." "That's a lie," Hale said, but his voice lacked conviction. General Hammond stepped forward. "Colonel Ashford, I'm going to ask you one question, and I advise you to think very carefully before you answer. Did Cyrus Hale pay you to massacre those Apache civilians?" The courtroom held its breath. Ashford stood rigid, his weathered features working through a dozen emotions: fear, shame, defiance, resignation. Finally his shoulders sagged. "Yes," he whispered. The word fell into the silence like a stone into a well. Then the courtroom exploded into an uproar that no amount of gavel banging could quell. People shouted, cried out, some in anger, some in vindication. Reporters scribbled frantically. The soldiers moved to restrain both Ashford and Hale. Through it all, Josiah reached for Naye's hand and found it already reaching for his. They stood together, fingers intertwined, while the world they had fought so hard to change finally began to shift around them. Judge Morrison finally restored enough order to speak. "This hearing is concluded. The charges against Naye are dismissed. The marriage between Josiah Brennan and Naye is recognized as legitimate and legal. Colonel Ashford and Mr. Hale will be remanded to military custody pending a full investigation and court-martial." He paused, looking at Naye with something like respect. "Ma'am, I apologize on behalf of this territory for what you endured. Your courage in coming forward may have prevented future atrocities." Naye nodded once, accepting the words but not quite believing them. As soldiers led Ashford and Hale away, Josiah turned to Naye. "You had that letter the whole time. Why didn't you tell me?" "Because if I had told you, you might have tried to use it too soon," she said. "Before we had Adeye, before we had enough pieces in place, the letter was my final weapon. I had to wait for the right moment." "You played this whole thing like a chess game," Josiah said, not sure whether to be impressed or angry. "I played it like survival," Naye corrected. "The only game I have ever known." Dakota approached them, Adeye leaning heavily on his arm. The old woman looked exhausted but satisfied. "It is done," she said in Apache. "The truth is spoken. Now I can rest." "Come back to the ranch with us," Naye said. "Both of you. Stay as long as you need." Dakota hesitated. "Your husband may not want Apache visitors." "Your sister's husband," Josiah said in halting Apache, the few words he had learned over the past week. Welcome's family. Dakota's eyes widened in surprise, then softened. He nodded. Then we will come, for a little while. They collected Samuel from Sheriff Dalton, who ruffled the boy's hair and told him his father was the bravest fool in the territory. The ride back to the ranch was subdued, everyone exhausted by the emotional weight of the day. Samuel fell asleep against Naye's side. Ade dozed in the back of the wagon. Even Dakota, riding alongside on his horse, looked ready to drop. Only Josiah and Naye remained alert, scanning the horizon out of habit, watching for dangers that might still lurk. The legal battle was won, but Josiah could not shake the feeling that this was not over. Men like Cyrus Hale had deep pockets and long reaches. Prison bars might not hold him for long. As if reading his thoughts, Naye said quietly, "It is not finished." "No," Josiah agreed, "but we won today. That's something." "It is everything," Naye said. "For so long I believed my survival was meaningless, that Kuruk and the others died for nothing. But today their deaths meant something. Today justice was spoken, even if it is not yet fully served." "We'll make sure it's served," Josiah promised, "whatever it takes." They reached the ranch as the sun was setting, painting the desert in shades of gold and red. Josiah helped everyone down from the wagon, then went to tend the horses. When he returned to the cabin, he found Naye standing in the doorway, silhouetted against the lamplight from within. "Josiah," she said, "in the courtroom you told my brother you loved me." "I did," he said. "Did you mean it?" Josiah thought about his answer carefully. "When I said it, I wasn't sure. I said it because it needed to be said, because it was what would convince him to help us. But now, after everything we've been through, after watching you stand up there and speak your truth, yes, I think I did mean it, and I think I still mean it now." Naye stepped down from the porch, closing the distance between them. She was so tall that even standing on the ground she was nearly eye to eye with him. "In my culture, love is not something that happens to you. It is something you build day by day, choice by choice. We have been building something, you and I. I do not know what to call it yet, but it feels like home." "Then let's keep building it," Josiah said. "One day at a time." She kissed him, then gentle and hesitant a question and an answer all at once. Josiah kissed her back, his hands coming up to cup her face, marveling at the softness beneath the strength. When they finally pulled apart, Dakota was standing in the doorway watching them with an unreadable expression. "The old woman needs a place to sleep," he said, "and I am tired of watching white men kiss my sister." "Then stop watching," Naye said, but she was smiling. They went inside together, this strange assembled family, and for the first time since Clara's death, Josiah's cabin felt truly like a home again. Not the same home it had been, but something new, something built from desperation and lies that had somehow transformed into truth. Outside, the desert night settled over the ranch. Somewhere in the darkness, a coyote called to its mate. The windmill turned slowly, drawing water from the deep earth, and in the sky, stars blazed in their thousands, indifferent and eternal. Inside the cabin, Ade told stories of the old days when the Apache roamed freely. Samuel listened with wide eyes, already half asleep. Dakota sat by the fire, cleaning his rifle with methodical care. Naye and Josiah sat close together, not quite touching, but aware of each other in every breath. It was peaceful. It was good. And Josiah knew, with the certainty that comes from hard-won wisdom, that peace like this was fragile and must be guarded fiercely. Because somewhere in redemption, Cyrus Hale sat in a cell plotting his revenge. Somewhere in the territorial capital, men who profited from Indian removal were learning what had happened and planning their response. Somewhere out in the vast Arizona desert, there were people who would not accept that a white rancher and an Apache woman could build a life together. The battle was won, but the war was far from over. And as Josiah sat in his cabin, surrounded by the people he had chosen as family, he made a silent vow. Whatever came next, whoever tried to tear this fragile piece apart, they would have to go through him first. He had stood between Naye and the gallows once. He would stand between her and harm again and again for as many days as he had left on this earth. That was what love meant. Not the easy love of courtship and romance, but the hard love of daily choice of standing your ground when the world demanded you step aside. And Josiah Brennan, poor rancher, widower, reluctant hero, had finally found something worth standing for. 3 weeks passed in an uneasy peace. The territorial newspapers had seized on the story of Skeleton Canyon with the fervor of hunting dogs catching a scent. Headlines screamed across Arizona and into California, New Mexico, even as far as Washington. Decorated colonel accused of massacre. Railroad baron implicated in Indian killings. Apache woman's testimony shakes territory. Josiah tried to ignore the attention, but it was impossible. Reporters came to the ranch daily demanding interviews, sketching pictures of Naye for their papers, turning their private struggle into public spectacle. Some painted them as heroes, a shining example of love transcending prejudice. Others vilified them, calling Josiah a traitor to his race and Naye a savage who had bewitched a grieving widower. The truth, as always, was more complicated than either narrative. General Hammond had been true to his word. Ashford and Hale remained in military custody at Fort Huachuca awaiting court-martial. But the investigation was slow, hampered by layers of bureaucracy, and Josiah suspected by powerful men who wanted the whole affair to disappear quietly. Hale had friends in high places, men who owed him favors or feared his influence. The territorial governor himself had written a letter questioning whether the testimony of 2 Apache women should be given equal weight to the word of a respected businessman. Dakota had stayed at the ranch longer than anyone expected, helping with the work and gradually, grudgingly accepting Josiah's place in his sister's life. Ade remained as well, too frail for the journey back to the mountains and content to spend her remaining days telling stories to Samuel, who absorbed every word like a sponge. The boy had changed in the weeks since the hearing. He no longer saw Naye as the exotic stranger who had saved his life, but simply as his mother in all the ways that mattered. He called her Ma without hesitation, held her hand when they walked, sought her comfort when he was hurt or frightened. Watching them together filled Josiah with a complicated joy, bittersweet because it highlighted what Samuel had lost when Clara died, but sweet because it showed what they were all gaining. On a cool morning in the dirt. They both straightened when in the dirt. They both straightened when they saw the sheriff approaching, instinctively wary of unexpected visitors. Dalton dismounted, his weathered face grim. "Brennan, ma'am, we need to talk." They gathered around the porch table while Ade brought out coffee. Dakota emerged from the barn, his rifle casually slung over his shoulder, and leaned against the railing to listen. "The court-martial is set for 2 weeks from now," Dalton said without preamble. "Both Ashford and Hale will stand trial at Fort Huachuca. They're bringing in a judge from back east, someone with no connections to the territory, trying to make it look fair." "That's good news, isn't it?" Josiah asked. Dalton's expression suggested otherwise. "Should be, but there's complications. Hale's lawyers are building a defense that essentially claims he was nowhere near Skeleton Canyon, that Ade is mistaken or lying, and that any money he gave Ashford was legitimate payment for railroad security services. They've got a dozen witnesses ready to testify he was in Tucson on the day of the massacre." "That's impossible," Naye said. "I saw him there." "So did I," Ade added in Apache, which Dakota translated. "I believe you," Dalton said. "But Hale's witnesses will be white businessmen, respectable types. Judges tend to give more weight to that kind of testimony, fair or not. And Ashford, well, he's changed his story. Says he was following orders from Hale, but now he claims those orders were to disperse a hostile gathering, not to massacre anyone. Says his men opened fire in self-defense when they thought they saw weapons." "That's a lie," Naye said, her voice sharp as broken glass. "Probably," Dalton agreed. "But it's a lie that gives the Army an out. They can court-martial Ashford for poor judgment instead of murder, slap his wrist, maybe drum him out with a dishonorable discharge. Hale walks free because there's no physical proof he gave the order, and everyone gets to pretend justice was served." Josiah felt rage building in his chest, hot and acidic. So they're going to get away with it? Not if we can help it, Dalton said. But we need more than testimony. We need evidence that directly ties Hale to the massacre. Documents witnesses who actually saw him there, something concrete. The letter, Josiah said, turning to Naye. The one Ashford wrote inviting the elders to Skeleton Canyon. That's evidence. It proves Ashford lied about the meeting being hostile. Dalton agreed. But it doesn't prove Hale was involved. We need more. Dakota spoke up, his voice thoughtful. There was a man, a white man who sometimes worked for Hale carrying messages, arranging meetings. I saw him at the reservation a few times before the massacre. He was asking questions about the elders, about who would be attending the peace talks. Do you know his name? Dalton asked. No, but I would recognize his face. He had a scar here. Dakota drew a line across his throat, like someone tried to cut his neck and failed. Dalton's eyes widened. That sounds like Wade Garrett. He's a known gun for hire, does dirty work for anyone who pays. If we can find him and get him to testify against Hale, that might be the evidence we need. Where is he now? Josiah asked. Last I heard, drinking himself to death in a saloon in Tucson, but getting him to talk will be near impossible. He's more afraid of Hale than he is of prison. Then we make him more afraid of us, Dakota said quietly. There was something in his tone that made even Dalton look uncomfortable. We do this legal, Josiah said firmly. No intimidation, no violence. We find Garrett, we convince him to tell the truth, and we do it the right way. Dakota snorted. The right way, the white man's way. And when that fails, what then? It won't fail, Josiah said, though he wasn't sure he believed it. They decided that Josiah and Dakota would travel to Tucson to find Wade Garrett. Naye wanted to come, but Dalton convinced her that her presence would attract too much attention. She was still the subject of intense newspaper coverage, and showing up in Tucson would alert Hale's people to what they were doing. The journey to Tucson took 2 days. Josiah and Dakota rode in silence for most of it, the unspoken tension between them finally breaking on the second evening as they made camp. You love my sister, Dakota said. It was not a question this time, but a statement that demanded acknowledgement. Yes, Josiah said simply, and she loves you. I think so. She hasn't said it, but yes, I believe she does. Dakota poked at the fire with a stick, his face illuminated by dancing flames. I do not understand it. For so long I hated all white men. I blamed you for everything we lost, for every injustice, for every death. And then you come along risking everything for her, and I do not know how to hold on to my hatred anymore. You don't have to stop hating, Josiah said. I'm not asking you to forgive what was done to your people. I can't even forgive it myself, and it wasn't done to me. But maybe you can hate what happened without hating every individual person who shares my skin color. Dakota was quiet for a long time. When he spoke again, his voice was softer. Kuruk used to say something similar. He said hate was like drinking poison and expecting your enemy to die. I called him weak for saying it. I wish I could tell him I understand now. Tell Naye instead, Josiah suggested. She carries him with her. Maybe she can pass the message along wherever spirits go. They reached Tucson the next afternoon. It was a larger town than Redemption, bustling with commerce and railroad construction. Chinese laborers worked alongside Mexican vaqueros and white prospectors, creating a strange mixing pot of cultures that existed nowhere else Josiah had seen. They found Wade Garrett exactly where Dalton said he would be, in a rundown saloon on the edge of town. He was younger than Josiah expected, perhaps 30, but looked 50. His face was bloated with drink. His hands shook, and the scar across his throat was angry and red. Garrett looked up when they approached his table, his bloodshot eyes widening in recognition when he saw Dakota. I know you, he slurred. You're one of them, one of the Canyon Indians. Sit down, Josiah said, his voice low but commanding. We need to talk. Got nothing to say to you, Garrett mumbled, but he didn't move when Josiah and Dakota sat across from him. Josiah leaned forward. We know you worked for Cyrus Hale. We know you were involved in setting up the Skeleton Canyon massacre, and we're here to give you a chance to do the right thing." Well, Garrett laughed a wet, phlegmy sound. "Right thing, that's funny. Ain't no right thing in this world, just varying degrees of wrong." "Testify against Hale," Josiah said. "Tell the court what you know. You'll probably still go to prison, but it'll be better than looking over your shoulder for the rest of your life wondering when Hale's going to decide you're a liability." "Hale don't kill liabilities," Garrett said. "He makes them disappear. There's a difference. And I aim to stay visible by keeping my mouth shut." Dakota's hand moved to his knife. "We could make you talk." "Go ahead," Garrett said, spreading his arms. "Put me out of my misery. I'm dead either way. At least if you kill me, it'll be quick." Josiah put a hand on Dakota's arm, stopping him. "What happened to you?" he asked Garrett. "What makes a man drink himself to death at 30? Garrett's eyes focused slightly, and for a moment Josiah saw genuine pain beneath the alcoholic haze. "I've done bad things, real bad. But Skeleton Canyon, that was different. Those were old people, women. They weren't fighters, they weren't threats. They were just people trying to survive." His voice cracked. "I was there. I saw Hale give the order, saw Ashford carry it out, and I didn't do nothing to stop it. I just stood there with a rifle in my hand and watched 40 people die because I was too much of a coward to speak up." "Then speak up now," Josiah said. "It's not too late to matter." "It's always too late," Garrett whispered. "But maybe you're right. Maybe it's better to die doing one good thing than to live doing nothing at all." He straightened slightly, some clarity returning to his eyes. "You want me to testify? Fine. I'll testify. But you better protect me until the trial, because the minute Hale finds out I'm talking, I'm a dead man." They arranged for Garrett to be taken into Sheriff Dalton's protective custody. The man would sober up in a jail cell for the next 2 weeks, and then he would stand before a court-martial board and tell the truth about Cyrus Hale's involvement in the Skeleton Canyon massacre. On the ride back to the ranch, Dakota said, "That was easier than I expected." "He wanted to confess," Josiah said. "He's been carrying that weight for 3 months. We just gave him permission to put it down." When they arrived back at the ranch, they found it transformed. Word had spread about the upcoming court-martial, and supporters had begun arriving. Other Apache families who had left the reservation, drawn by Nye's story and the possibility of justice. White settlers who believed in fairness and were outraged by the massacre. Even a group of Chinese railroad workers who had suffered their own injustices at Hale's hands. They camped around the ranch in a growing community, sharing food and stories, preparing to travel to Fort Huachuca together for the trial. It was unprecedented, this gathering of different peoples united by a common cause. Nye stood on the porch surveying the scene with wonder. When she saw Josiah and Dakota approaching, she ran to meet them, embracing her brother and then her husband with equal fierceness. "You found him?" she asked. "The witness?" "We found him," Josiah confirmed, "and he's willing to testify." Tears filled her eyes. "Then maybe finally they will hear us." That night they held a gathering around a large fire. Ade told the story of Skeleton Canyon speaking in Apache, while Dakota translated, ensuring everyone understood what they were fighting for. People wept openly. Some shared their own stories of injustice, of family members lost to violence or disease, of land stolen and promises broken. And through it all, Josiah held Nye's hand and marveled at what had been created. What had started as a desperate lie on a gallows platform had become something real and powerful, a movement for truth that transcended racial boundaries. As the fire burned low and people began drifting to their tents and wagons, Nye pulled Josiah aside. "Walk with me," she said. They walked beyond the circle of firelight out into the desert under a canopy of stars. The night was cool and clear, the air carrying the scent of sage and possibility. "I need to tell you something," Nye said, her voice soft. "Something I have been afraid to say." Josiah's heart clenched. "What is it?" She turned to face him, her height making her a silhouette against the stars. "I am with child. Your child. Our child." The words hit Josiah like a physical blow. He staggered slightly, his mind reeling. A child, New life emerging from all this death and struggle. It seemed impossible and inevitable all at once. "Are you sure?" he managed to ask. "I am sure. I have known for a week, but did not know how to tell you. We married as a lie, and now I carry the child of that lie, except it is not a lie anymore. I do not know what that makes us, what that makes this child, but I wanted you to know before the trial, in case—" She did not finish the sentence, but she didn't need to. In case something went wrong, in case they lost, in case the fragile peace they had built came crashing down. Josiah reached up and cupped her face in his hands, pulling her down to kiss her with all the love and fear and hope that he could not find words for. When they broke apart, he pressed his forehead to hers. "We're going to win," he said, "and we're going to raise this child together in a world that's better than the one we were born into. I promise you that." "Do not make promises you cannot keep," Naye whispered. "Then I'll keep this one," Josiah said, "or die trying." The 2 weeks before the court-martial passed in a blur of preparation. Dalton kept Wade Garrett safe and sober. Naye and Adaye reviewed their testimonies with lawyers provided by sympathetic groups back east. Reporters continued to descend on the ranch, and Josiah gave careful interviews, making sure the story reached as wide an audience as possible. The more publicity the trial received, the harder it would be for the Army to bury the truth. Finally, the day arrived. The journey to Fort Huachuca took most of the morning, and when they arrived, they found the post transformed. Stands had been erected to accommodate the crowd of observers. Newspaper correspondents from as far as New York and Chicago had positions near the front. The Army had clearly decided that if this trial was going to be public, it would be thoroughly public. The court-martial board consisted of 5 officers led by a stern-faced colonel named Whitmore, who had been brought in specifically because he had no connections to anyone involved. The judge advocate, essentially the prosecutor, was a sharp young captain named Ross. Ashford and Hale each had their own lawyers, expensive men in expensive suits who radiated confidence. Naye, Josiah, and the others took their seats in the front row. Samuel sat between them, his small hand gripping his father's tightly. Behind them, the makeshift courtroom filled with Apache families, white settlers, newspaper men, and curious soldiers. The trial began with testimony from General Hammond, who outlined the official version of events as it had been reported. A routine patrol had encountered a group of Apache warriors. Shots were exchanged. The Army had prevailed. It was only later he explained that discrepancies in the reports began to emerge. Then came the defense. Ashford's lawyer painted his client as a dedicated soldier who had made a difficult decision in a dangerous situation. Yes, civilians had died, which was regrettable, but the chaos of combat made such tragedies inevitable. Ashford had acted in good faith, believing the Apache delegation to be a threat. Hale's lawyer went further, arguing that his client had nothing to do with any military action. He was a businessman, not a soldier. Any money he paid to Colonel Ashford was legitimate payment for security services related to railroad surveys. He had never ordered a massacre, never even been to Skeleton Canyon. The prosecution called Naye to the stand. She walked forward with her head high, her hand briefly touching Josiah's shoulder as she passed. Under Captain Ross's questioning, she described the events of that day in unflinching detail. The arrival of the Apache elders, the appearance of Cyrus Hale, the private conversation with Ashford, the sudden eruption of gunfire. Ashford's lawyer tried to shake her testimony on cross-examination. "Isn't it true, Miss Naye, that you hate Colonel Ashford?" "Yes," she said simply. "And you would say anything to see him punished?" "No," she said. "I would say the truth to see him punished. Lies are not necessary when the truth is terrible enough." Hale's lawyer took a different approach. "You claim my client was present at Skeleton Canyon, but you've never identified him before today. Why is that?" "I did not know his name," Naye said. "I knew only that he was a white man with silver hair who gave orders to the colonel. When I saw him at the hearing in Redemption, I recognized him immediately." "Convenient," the lawyer said snidely. "Or perhaps you simply saw a wealthy white man and decided to blame him for your people's troubles." Before Naye could respond, Dakota stood up in the gallery. "I can identify him. I saw Cyrus Hale at the San Carlos Reservation 2 weeks before the massacre asking questions about which elders would attend the peace talks. I can describe the clothes he wore, the horse he rode, and the questions he asked. The lawyer's confidence wavered. That's not proper testimony. Then put me on the stand, Dakota said. Let me testify properly. And so he did. Dakota's testimony corroborated Nye's adding details about Hale's presence at the reservation and his suspicious interest in the peace delegation. Then came Adaye, who spoke through a translator with the moral authority of her 73 years. She described hiding under bodies, hearing Ashford's order to burn the evidence, hearing the arrival of Apache warriors that saved her life. But the most damaging testimony came from Wade Garrett. Sober for the first time in months, his hands still shaking slightly, he took the stand and told the truth. He had been drowning in whiskey. "Mr. Hale hired me to help set up the meeting," Garrett said, his voice barely above a whisper. "He told me to make sure the Apache elders believed it was a genuine peace negotiation. He said we needed them all in one place at one time. I didn't know why. I swear I didn't not until I saw him ride up to Skeleton Canyon that day." "And what did you see?" Captain Ross asked. "I saw him talk to Colonel Ashford. Saw him hand over a leather satchel, must have had $10,000 in it. Heard him say, and I quote, 'Kill them all. Make it look like self-defense. I need that land clear by next month.' Then he rode away, and 15 minutes later the shooting started." Pandemonium broke loose. Hale's lawyer jumped to his feet, objecting, demanding to know why this witness had not been disclosed earlier. Judge Whitmore banged his gavel, calling for order. Cyrus Hale himself stood up, his face purple with rage. "That's a lie. This man is a known drunken criminal. You can't believe a word he says." "Mr. Hale, sit down," Whitmore commanded. "You'll have your chance to respond." But Hale was beyond reason. "This is a farce, a conspiracy. You're taking the word of savages and drunks over a respected businessman. I have rights. I have influence. I will not be treated this way." His outburst did more damage than any testimony could have. The court-martial board watched him with cold, assessing eyes. This was not a man confident in his innocence. This was a man who had been caught. The trial continued for 3 more days with expert witnesses, character witnesses, and endless legal arguments. But the essential facts were clear. Ashford admitted to carrying out the massacre. Garrett testified that Hale had ordered and paid for it. Nye, Dakota, and Adaye provided eyewitness accounts. On the 4th day, the court-martial board retired to deliberate. They were gone for less than 2 hours. When they returned, Colonel Whitmore read the verdict in a voice devoid of emotion. "Colonel Vernon Ashford, this board finds you guilty of conduct unbecoming an officer, of filing false reports, and of murder. You are hereby stripped of your rank and sentenced to death by hanging." Ashford collapsed in his chair, weeping. "Cyrus Hale, this board finds you guilty of conspiracy to commit murder, of ordering the deaths of 40 civilians, and of attempting to obstruct justice. You are sentenced to life imprisonment at hard labor." Hale did not collapse. He stood rigid, his face a mask of fury, and said nothing. Cheers and cries filled the courtroom. Josiah pulled Nye into his arms, feeling her shake with sobs of relief and grief. Samuel hugged them both. Dakota embraced Adaye, the old woman's tears soaking his shirt. It was over. Finally, impossibly, it was over. The execution of Colonel Vernon Ashford took place 1 week later, carried out with military precision and no fanfare. Josiah did not attend, and neither did Nye. They had seen enough death. Let the army clean up its own mess. Cyrus Hale was transported to a military prison in New Mexico, where he would spend the rest of his days breaking rocks under the desert sun. His business empire collapsed without him, his properties sold off to pay his legal debts and restitution to the Apache families affected by his crimes. But for Josiah and Nye, the real journey was just beginning. They returned to their ranch to find it transformed by the community that had gathered there. The temporary camps had become more permanent, with families deciding to settle in the area rather than return to the overcrowded reservation. The land around Josiah's small spread had become a kind of unofficial settlement, a place where Apache and white settlers lived side by side in uneasy but hopeful proximity. They called it Two Rivers, named for the creek that split into two branches just north of Josiah's property. It was not a legal town, not yet, but it was becoming something real. Dakota stayed surprising everyone, especially himself. He claimed it was to watch over his sister and make sure the white man treated her right. But Josiah suspected it was something more. Dakota was tired of fighting, tired of running, tired of living with hate as his only companion. Here he could rest. Here he could heal. Ade lived through the trial, but died peacefully in her sleep. 2 months later, her mission complete. They buried her on a hill overlooking two rivers, with both Apache and Christian ceremonies honoring her passage. Samuel brought flowers to her grave every week, even as summer turned to fall. As Naye's pregnancy progressed, the reality of becoming a father again filled Josiah with a complex mixture of joy and terror. He had raised Samuel from birth, but that had been with Clara by his side. Doing it again, this time with Naye, felt like a new adventure entirely. Naye bloomed with pregnancy, her already impressive height making her look like some earth goddess from ancient stories. She continued working the ranch almost until the day she went into labor, stubbornly refusing to be treated as fragile. The baby came on a cold November night, delivered by a midwife from Redemption, with Ade's sister attending to provide traditional Apache medicines and prayers. Josiah paced outside the cabin with Dakota and Samuel, 3 generations of men rendered helpless by the mystery of birth. When the baby's cry finally pierced the night, Josiah rushed inside to find Naye exhausted but radiant, holding a tiny red-faced infant girl. The baby was impossibly small, especially cradled in Naye's large hands, but she had strong lungs and clear eyes that seemed to take in everything. "She's beautiful," Josiah whispered, kneeling beside the bed. "She's perfect." "She is ours," Naye said, and the simple possessive carried all the weight of what they had built together. Not mine, not yours, but ours. A family forged from necessity that had become something chosen and cherished. They named her Clara Nayland Brennan, honoring both the woman who had died and the culture that had survived. It was a bold name, a declaration that this child belonged to both worlds and would be diminished by neither. Samuel took to big brotherhood with enthusiasm, constantly wanting to hold his sister, telling her stories, bringing her wild flowers and interesting rocks. Dakota, tough as iron. Dakota melted completely around the baby, speaking to her in Apache and teaching her songs before she was old enough to understand words. As winter settled over Arizona, Two Rivers continued to grow. Families built permanent structures, planted winter gardens, established a school where Apache and white children learned together. It was not perfect, tensions still flared, old prejudices died hard, but it was a start. Reverend Hollis came out from Redemption to conduct services in the schoolhouse, though he wisely kept his sermons short and his judgments to himself. Sheriff Dalton visited regularly, more friend now than lawmen, often staying for dinner and playing with the baby. One evening in late December, as Josiah and Naye sat by the fire with Clara sleeping between them, Josiah asked the question that had been on his mind for months. "Are you happy?" Naye considered the question seriously. "Happy is a strange word. I am not sure I know what it means anymore. I have moments of contentment, of peace. I have you and Samuel and Clara. I have my brother living nearby. I have a home. But I also carry the dead with me always. Karuk and the others from Skeleton Canyon, they are with me in every breath. So perhaps I am not happy in the simple way people mean, but I am alive and my life has meaning. That is more than I dreamed possible when I stood on that gallows." "I understand," Josiah said, because he did. His own happiness was complicated by Clara's ghost, by guilt over moving forward, by the knowledge that their peace had been purchased with blood and struggle. "But," Naye continued, a small smile playing at her lips, "when I hold our daughter, when I see Samuel learning from Dakota, when you look at me the way you are looking at me right now in those moments, I think I feel something very close to happiness." Josiah reached across the sleeping baby to take Naye's hand. "Then we'll keep building those moments, one day at a time." As winter gave way to spring, word came from Washington. The Skeleton Canyon trial had sparked a broader investigation into the treatment of Native peoples in the territories. A commission was being formed to review land policies, treaty enforcement, and military conduct. It was a small step, and Josiah had no illusions that it would solve centuries of injustice, but it was movement in the right direction. Naye was invited to testify before the commission to share her story on a national stage. She agonized over the decision for weeks. The idea of leaving her family, of returning to the public eye, filled her with dread. But she also knew that her voice carried weight now that her suffering had been transformed into power. In the end, she decided to go with Josiah and the children accompanying her. They would make the journey together as they did everything now. Before they left, they held a gathering at Two Rivers. The entire community came together for a feast celebrating the first year of their settlement and looking forward to the future. There was music, Apache drums mixing with fiddles and guitars. There was food, traditional and modern dishes sharing space on long tables. There was laughter, children playing together without the burdens of their parents' histories. As the sun set and the celebration continued, Josiah stood slightly apart, watching his daughter sleep in Naye's arms, while Samuel showed Dakota a trick with a rope he had learned. This was not the life he had imagined when he first pulled that trigger in Redemption's town square. It was harder, more complicated, more uncertain. But it was also richer, deeper, more meaningful than anything he could have planned. He had set out to save one woman's life and ended up helping to build a community. He had claimed a marriage as a lie and found it becoming the truest thing in his world. He had lost one family and gained another, different but equally beloved. Sheriff Dalton materialized beside him, 2 cups of whiskey in his hands. He offered one to Josiah. "To the future," Dalton said, raising his cup. "To the future," Josiah echoed, "however uncertain it may be." "Uncertainty is just another word for possibility," Dalton said. "You've built something special here, Brennan. Don't underestimate it." "I'm trying not to," Josiah said. "But some days I wake up expecting it all to fall apart like it's too good to be real." "Life's like that," Dalton said. "The good things feel fragile because we know how easily they can be lost. But that's what makes them worth protecting. You stood up when it mattered and look what came from it. That's not nothing." As if sensing the weight of the conversation, Naye joined them, Clara still asleep in her arms. She leaned against Josiah, her height allowing her to rest her chin on top of his head in a gesture that had become familiar and comforting. "What are you thinking about?" she asked. "About how far we've come," Josiah said. "About how much farther we have to go." "We'll go together," Naye said simply. "That's all that matters." Samuel ran up then, breathless with excitement. "Pa, my Uncle Dakota says when we go to Washington maybe we can see the president. Is that true? Can we really?" Josiah and Naye exchanged amused glances. "Maybe," Josiah said, "but probably not. Presidents are busy men." "But we're important now too," Samuel said with the absolute confidence of a 9-year-old. "Everyone knows our story. They made us important." "No," Naye corrected gently. "We made ourselves important by telling the truth. That is different from being made important by others." Samuel considered this with the seriousness he gave to all of Naye's lessons. "I think I understand. It's like how you're strong because you are not because someone said you could be." "Exactly like that," Naye said, and the pride in her voice made Josiah's chest ache with love. The journey to Washington took weeks by wagon and by train, a long and exhausting trek that tested everyone's patience. But it also gave them time together as a family, time to talk and rest and simply be. Clara learned to crawl during the journey, much to Samuel's delight. Naye learned to navigate white society's expectations, though she never fully bent to them, maintaining her dignity and her difference with quiet strength. The testimony before the commission was difficult, forcing Naye to relive trauma she had worked hard to process. But she spoke clearly and forcefully, her words creating a record that could not be ignored or forgotten. Newspapers across the country printed her story, and for a few brief weeks the nation paid attention to issues it had long preferred to ignore. It was not enough to change everything, but it was something. And sometimes Josiah was learning something was all you could hope for. They returned to Two Rivers in late summer to find the settlement thriving. More families had arrived, drawn by stories of a place where different peoples lived in peace. A general store had opened run by a Chinese couple who had saved enough from railroad work to start their own business. A doctor had set up practice, a young man from Philadelphia who believed in serving all people regardless of race. Two Rivers was becoming real, growing from hope into substance. On a warm September evening, Josiah and Naye took their children and walked to the hill where Ade was buried. The view from there encompassed the entire settlement, the small houses and gardens, the smoke rising from chimneys, the children playing in the dusty streets. "Look at it," Naye said softly. "Look at what grew from our lie." "It's not a lie anymore," Josiah said. "It never was, really. Just a truth that needed time to become real." Clara toddled between them, holding both their hands, babbling in a mixture of English and Apache that only she understood. Samuel ran ahead, chasing a butterfly, his laughter carrying on the wind. "I'm going to tell her the story someday," Naye said, "when she's old enough to understand. I'm going to tell her about the gallows, about the massacre, about all of it. She needs to know where she comes from." "We'll tell her together," Josiah said, "the whole truth, good and bad. And we'll tell her that love is not something that happens to you," Naye continued. "It's something you build day by day, choice by choice. We built this, you and I. We chose each other, chose this life, chose to keep choosing, even when it was hard." Josiah pulled her close, or as close as their height difference allowed. "Best choice I ever made." "Second best," Naye corrected with a rare smile. "The first was pulling that trigger." They stood there as the sun set, casting long shadows across Two Rivers, turning the desert gold and crimson. Below them their community lived and breathed, imperfect but striving, broken, but healing, a testament to what was possible when people chose courage over comfort. And in that moment, standing on a hill with his wife and children, overlooking a town that existed because one desperate lie had become an enduring truth, Josiah Brennan felt something he had not felt since Clara died. Hope. Not the naive hope of youth, but the hard-won kind earned through standing when it would be easier to fall, through choosing truth over silence, through building love where hate had sown division. The desert wind picked up, carrying the scent of sage and rain. Clara squealed with delight, pointing at storm clouds on the horizon. Samuel came running back, demanding to hear again about the gallows, about how his father became a hero. Josiah looked at Naye, and she looked back, and in that glance passed a lifetime of understanding. They were not heroes, not really. Just people who had chosen to do what was right when it would have been easier to look away. But perhaps that was what heroes were in the end. "Come on," Josiah said, scooping Clara into his arms. "Let's go home." Together, as the first drops of rain began to fall, blessing the desert and the people who had dared to dream of something better, they walked down the hill toward Two Rivers, toward home, toward a future they would write together. The story that began with a lie on a gallows platform ended with truth on a hilltop. Between those two moments lay everything that mattered: love earned through sacrifice, courage tested by fire, and the unshakable proof that one person's choice to stand could change the world. It was enough.